Hey, long time no see, but I am back. I'm the developer of Kohlrabi Starship and I recently went to GDC to present my game and find a publisher. So I had to pitch a lot. And I ended up winning the very big indie pitch and have this golden baseball bat to show for. I learned a lot from the internet, my mentors and peers about pitching before going to GDC. So I want to share what I learned with you too. And of course show you a bit about my experience at GDC. So let's start at the beginning. I received news that I could go to GDC last December, so I had about 3 months to prepare, and dang did I need them. There goes so much into it. Business card design, flyer design, creating banners, creating a press kit, applying to so many different side events, writing many game summaries, studio summaries, all with slightly different requirements and word counts, creating so much differently sized promotional art, reaching out and researching publishers, polishing the demo, and then of course creating a pitch deck, which also includes having a very detailed project and finance plan. So the weeks before GDC were incredibly intense, but with all that prepared, off I went. I had 2 days, I think, to adjust to the jet lag and enjoy the city before the most intense week of my life began. I had applied to all the events and my schedule was incredibly full. There's GDC itself, where I presented Kohlrabi Starship at the Swiss Games booth, but I also managed to showcase the game at the Godot booth at the same time. Then of course there were scheduled meetings with publishers, and in the days leading up to GDC there's another event called Pocket Gamer Connect, where I also had a booth and events like the very big indie pitch or a publisher speed dating took place. In both those events you have like 5 minutes to pitch your game to a lot of different publishers. And then every evening there was another showcasing event at cool clubs and locations like the European Game Showcase, The Mix, Courage XL and others. So my day started at about 6 a.m. and I finished something after midnight. Just imagine being jet-lagged, not being able to sit all day and carrying a monitor and other hardware from one event to the next. But I also had incredible support from a lot of different people. Swiss Games made it possible for me and for a few other Swiss Game studios to attend. They funded our booth and travels, and they offered incredible help with organizing and with workshops on pitching, talking to media and other things before we went. I also shared an Airbnb with 2 other studios from Switzerland, and they already had a lot of experience with presenting at GDC. I learned so much from them. You should check them out. They work on Wisdom Academy and Rise of Palace. GDC is mostly a conference for game developers, publishers, the press, and lots of smaller companies that offer services like marketing, localization, and everything else that one would need to make a game. But it is not so much for gamers themselves. So therefore my goal for going there was to talk to publishers and hopefully get a deal, but not so much for marketing. So for talking to publishers, I needed a pitch deck. So let's have a look. Here's my pitch deck. I redacted a few things that are not yet public, but it should give you a good overview nonetheless. Alright, so this is the first slide. This is usually used as kind of a teaser. You show off the main key art and you have a short sentence that summarizes the game so that the publisher can get an immediate impression of what this is about. And if you've won some stuff, then it's also good to put it onto the front page. Then it's good to have one page about the visuals. So maybe you put in some screenshots, or if you are not that far in the game development yet, you can also put in some concept art, some character art, something that shows off how the game will look like in the end. And then there needs to be a slide about what makes your game unique. These are so-called unique selling points. Basically everything that sets your game apart. So, for example, with Kohlrabi Starship, it talked about the unique genre combination. I also talked about how the ecosystems work, which is different than in other farming games. I talked about the forward time travel that will be there. All of that kind of good stuff goes in here. I can't stress enough, this is a super important slide. It's okay to spend some time here to really explain what makes your game unique. I actually made a second slide. Usually it's good to have one point on one slide, but I made a second one to go a bit more into it. And I also decided to include very briefly some mechanics that will be in there that are true and tested, like customization, romance, and biomes, because I thought it's important. But yeah, these are not really unique selling points because a lot of games in the cozy genre and in the farming genre have that. Okay, moving on. Then I had a slide about the story. It's better not to go too much into the lore that you've worked on for your game. It's an optional slide, you don't necessarily have to have it, but if you can shortly explain how the game kind of ties together with the story, or like explain the setting, I think that's good, so I had it. I also put in a slide about progression. Basically, what's the core loop that keeps the players playing. So for example, in some games there will be, you go out, you slay some monsters, you get loot, and then you improve your stats. And then you go out and slay bigger and stronger monsters, right? So this is kind of like a core loop. In case of Kohlrabi Starship, the motivation is to repair the starship. You can go to different planets, you collect more. Basically put here what motivates the player, why do they play the game, and how do they progress. Then I had a slide about new play experience. That's also, like, not all pitch decks I've seen have that, but I thought it might be nice. Can explain how a new player will be welcomed into the game, right? How do they learn the mechanics? Will there be a tutorial? How does all of that work? Is it like super complicated or is it intuitive? It's good to explain a little bit. Then I had a slide about scope. And scope means how much content will there be in the game. You can, for example, go and research some similar games to yours and see how much average playtime do they have. And if you are sure you can make a similar amount of content, then that's your best estimate of how much hours of average playtime you can offer. You can also talk about replayability. So if you, for example, have a roguelike, a deck builder, if you have procedurally generated worlds, or you have different romance options, these are all things that make your game replayable. Then, of course, also a very important slide is talking about the team. For Kohlrabi Starship, that's just me, so a very simple slide. Here you put all the experience that makes publishers confident that you can finish this game. So if you've made games before, you put that here. If you didn't, you put some other stuff here, like, oh, I did this very big project, I finished it, and this is how it went. Or these are the engines that I have experience with, all of that kind of stuff. Of course, I redacted a lot here, you can't see anything, but yeah, this is how it goes. Then we have a slide about music. Maybe you already know my brother makes the music for the game, so I thought it would be good to have an extra slide here. Maybe at this point I should talk about like different ways to do the pitch deck, because either you talk to a publisher directly, right? And then you can explain a lot of the stuff that's on a slide and you need less text. But of course, if you send the deck to someone, it's good if you have like clickable parts to stuff you have online, right? If you uploaded the music somewhere, they can click and find it here. That's always good to have. Okay, next, of course, I also included the pitch trailer. It's just a video that you all already know. So let's skip the slide. Let's go. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is a slide where I linked to the prototype. If you send the deck to someone, of course, they want to try the prototype. It's super important. You can also add some Steam keys here if you have them. But of course, make sure there are different ones for every publisher. But then, of course, if you talk to the publisher directly, you don't need the slide. You will show them directly the game at a booth or somewhere. Yep. Okay, and then we have this market analysis slide. There's actually a lot of research that went into it, but if you talk to people, it's good to condense it down as much as possible. There's also different ways to go about it, but the way I choose to do it is I researched different games in the same genre that are comparable, and not just those that did very well. We all knew how well Stardew Valley did, but we can't, well, not every game is going to be Stardew Valley, and publishers know this, right? It's a bit unrealistic. So what I did instead is I kind of picked 5 different games from how well they did. Like on the left are the games that did really, really well. On the right are games that did less well. And then I kind of estimated how I could fit in this, also in terms of content, right? And it's good here to keep a realistic outlook. In terms of the numbers, you can find those on different websites. I will link them in the description. The point of the slide is to tell the publisher, okay, I think I can sell that many copies of this game for a realistic price point of maybe, let's say, $20, right? And then they can make an estimate of how much revenue there will be for your game, and if that matches with how much you are asking for. If you are asking for like $500,000 to make the game, but you can't realistically sell enough to ever make back $500,000, then of course that's not gonna work for a publisher, right? So yeah, that's the point of this slide. Another important slide is to talk about the timeline. Here I redacted and changed a lot so that you don't know when Kohlrabi Starship will come out, because that's all still very unclear, so I can't really make promises yet. But anyway, the goal of the slide is to show the major milestones of the game development process, like a first demo or early access, and then of course the final release. And the way you can go about it of like making these estimates is basically, well, what I did is I made a very detailed task list of all the things that still needed to go into the game. Then I put numbers onto this. So for example, let's say I still want character customization, and I estimate this will take me X amount of weeks to implement. And I did this for every single task. And then I calculated how many days it will take me, and then put on some vacation days and stuff like this. And then you can get a rough estimate of how long it will take you to make the game. It's good to simplify though. Okay, well, then the next very important point is, of course, what do you want from a publisher? Most people, of course, want funding. There's a few studios that are just looking for marketing because they took care of the funding already. There are other things you can ask for example, quality assurance, so game testing basically, localization, so translating into different languages. Porting is another thing you can ask for. And then I didn't just put down, oh, I want like 3 million to make Kohlrabi Starship, but I split it up a little bit. First of all, I said, okay, for the full release, which you can see in the center, this is all the stuff that would be in the game, and this is how much it will cost me to make. But it's always good to give options, right? So different publishers have different amounts they can spend. So there are big publishers who are comfortable spending millions. There are smaller publishers where it's more around 250,000 that they spend on a game. And then, of course, it also really depends on the current market situation. So, for example, if a publisher wants to spend more, you can have like these add-on packages. It's kind of like extra content you can make for the game, but it's not super necessary for full release, right? Yeah, so splitting it up, I think, is a good idea. There's different studios who do the slide differently, but this is what I went for. Okay, then next, I did a slide about community. Here it's good to show off if you already kind of advertise the game, right? This is about marketing. Are you talking to people? Do people know about the game? How many wish lists do you have? I mainly put down the YouTube channel because this is how I talk to you guys. Also, if you've won anything, if you've got funding, if you have any outside support that shows proof that other people believe your game is good and worth making, put this on its slide. Alright, and then the last slide. Here I just kind of like collected all kinds of random information, not really necessary. So for example here, there is a point about localization. For example, I saw that one publisher, they wanted to know if you have like hard-coded strings in your game or not and how it works. So I just put the information in here, the engine, the target platforms, all of that. And then I finish with the last slide about just my contact information. Lastly, this is called a deck because you present one aspect on each slide, which means you can easily rearrange the deck or delete some unneeded slides, depending on who you talk to. It is always good to keep your audience in mind. And now you know how I went home with this beauty. Okay. Now you have pitched your amazing game to publishers. Quite a few publishers showed interest. It should not be long until contract is signed, right? Well, don't rush your horses out the stable. That's not how it works. According to more experienced people I have talked to, it can take many months until you have a deal. Let's see where Kohlrabi Starship is at now. Alright, so let's have a look at the numbers. Basically, I reached out to many different publishers. And here in the graph, I only show those which actually showed interest in the game. So there were 21 publishers I've been in contact with and talked to them or had an email exchange. And all those basically go into the graph on the left. So the big blue bar, that's 18 publishers I basically met by chance at the booth. They tried out the game, I talked to them. Then we also have 4 publishers, the violet bar at the bottom, which I reached out to in the beginning before GDC, and I asked them to meet with me so I can pitch the game. And then there's one last publisher that I got in contact with actually because another publisher recommended them to me, and that's how the contact was established. Of those where the business card was exchanged, with most of them, there was also an email exchange. I sent them the pitch deck. I sent them some Steam keys so they could try out the prototype. With one of them, I had a virtual meeting that was really cool from my perspective. But most of them did not answer yet. So I think it's been like 2 months now since GDC. But I heard it's very normal that it can take a long time. So I'm not too worried about that. Maybe some of them already have made a decision but didn't have the time to answer. Maybe for some it just went through the cracks. They have so many people they talk to, of course. Maybe some are still in the review process. I don't know. I will wait for an answer and reach out from time to time to see. So those are 12 publishers. And then 9 publishers actually got back to me and said they reviewed the game. So they played the prototype, they looked at the pitch deck. And of those, I have 5 that said it's not a fit. Most of the time, the reason was that it didn't really fit well with the types of games they publish. And then I had 4 publishers which actually said it's very interesting to them, but it's still too early in the development process to sign a deal. Which it sounds a bit disappointing, but actually I'm very happy with the result because it means the door is still open. I can talk to them again once I have a demo ready. Yeah, so this is the result, and it means basically there are 4 publishers that are a hot lead, and hopefully in the future it will lead to a deal and the future of Kohlrabi Starship will be secured. Let's see, I will keep you updated on the journey. I'm very happy to say that Kohlrabi Starship will be part of Gamescom in Cologne in August as well. So hopefully I can show publishers the progress on the game and get closer to a sweet publisher deal. But no worries, even if that doesn't work out, I will find a way to bring Kohlrabi Starship to you. There were at GDC a lot of other cool things that happened. For example, Devlog, the developer of Dolphin, came by my booth at the Godot area, and I might have embarrassed myself a bit by fangirling too much, but you should go check out his channel. I have been following since before I started work on Kohlrabi Starship, and I'm a huge fan. I also met one of my YouTube followers, Brainspace Dev, and thanks a lot for stopping by the booth. It was so lovely to talk to you. And that concludes my little summary of GDC. I could possibly not fit everything that happened into a video, but I'm happy to talk more about it in the comments if you have questions. if you want to be notified once you can play Kohlrabi Starship, go wishlist on Steam. And there's also a very lively Discord with lots of smaller updates. I can only recommend to join. I also want to thank my patrons again. Thank you so much for your support, not just on Patreon, but also for playtesting the game. Thanks Vahakin Oscuris and Keegan Wants. And thanks to you for watching. Like and subscribe. Bye bye.